we start, I want to congratulate you. Cardinal has just become a father. He's just had a little baby girl. Congratulations. My daughter's here in the front, which probably half of you have met already because she makes sure she's home and she makes sure everybody knows who she is. So, hi, Carmen. So I wanted to congratulate you up front on that. You've got a great story. I mean, one thing I try to do is highlight Canadian successes, in particular successes in Toronto. We have a habit, as I don't know if it's a Canadian thing, maybe it is, right? We're a little bit, we kind of hold ourselves back and we say, oh, you know, maybe we're not so great. You know what, we're really great. I was about to drop F-bomb. We're really, really great. There's a lot of energy in the city, a lot of smart people doing amazing things, and you're certainly a part of that. Can you tell us a little bit about how you grew up?
I mean, I was born in Toronto. I was born, probably why everybody thinks I'm from Scarborough. I was born in, stupid Wikipedia. I was born in Scarborough, at Scarborough Centenary Hospital. Well, how old am I? About 17 years ago. And, but I've lived all around the city of Toronto. We moved from neighborhood to neighborhood. And I would say a very stereotypical Torontonian upbringing. It means I'm a real Toronto kid. Clearly you're not a Toronto kid because you don't know what that means. A stereotypical Toronto person is exactly what you see in this audience. I went to school with people that looked like everybody that's sitting here today. So that means people that, it's funny, I don't know if anybody that I grew up with, I don't think beyond maybe people's, at the most, not even, I think most people that I grew up with, their parents came here from somewhere. So the neighborhood that I grew up with, it's like, you know, oh, my parents came from Italy, or my parents came from Greece, or from India, or wherever. So it's like, that's the, you know, the same type of neighborhood that I grew up in, the same type of people that I grew up with. I first grew up in a neighborhood called, or my earliest recollection is a neighborhood called Flemington Park, which is a pretty blue-collar neighborhood, but it was amazing community. And I think that was the first time that I was ever exposed to the culture of hip-hop. Because growing up in that community, I didn't really realize it was a thing. It was kind of just what we did, like kids would break dance, you know, they would bring their cardboard boxes and they'd, you know, have breakdance battles and whatever. And it was a natural thing that we did. It was people from the neighborhood would take trips and go to Buffalo, or actually go down to New York City, go to Brooklyn, go to Queens, and not just come back with the latest fashion, but also with whatever the latest trends in music was at the time. So that was a benefit to growing up in that neighborhood. But then, you know, we moved from there, we moved to Scarborough for like 2 years. And then I think up until I moved out of my house, I lived in a neighborhood called Oakwood and Vaughan. And it's very interesting because economically, we were kind of like a stone's throw away from Forest Hill and a stone's throw away from police departments and other stuff. So it was a pretty interesting neighborhood to grow up in, because it's like on one side of you had Eglinton West, which is predominantly Caribbean, and then over to the west is Little Italy over by Dufferin and St. Clair, and then like I said, going the other way is Forest Hill. So I was in the middle of this like just mashup of people and of trains of thought, and just, you know what I mean, different morals, values, and social upbringings and customs. So I think having that experience kind of prepared me to be the adult that I am and think about life the way that I think about it now. Because, and I guess we'll get to it, but traveling the world, nothing was new. It's like, I remember, you know, the first tour we did in India, and they're like, oh, we're gonna take you to this restaurant, but food's really spicy, oh, Kardinal, you gotta be careful. And I'm like, clearly you don't know anything about Toronto. Had it, been here, done that, like, you know what I'm saying? And it was literally like, that was obviously like, there's certain customary differences, like when you go to Japan, just the type of people that you meet in Japan, fundamentally, it's a different type of society. Like, theirs is based on respect, humility, the people there are quiet and courteous. And it's funny because whenever you go to Japan and you come back, you realize how loud and obnoxious we are. But what's amazing is coming from Toronto, I don't think there's a single place in the world that I went that came as a real shock, just because of all the different people that we have that came and made a home here in Canada and in Toronto.
Who would you say are your biggest musical influences?
Let me try and get a gauge of the room. How many people were born in the 70s in here? 1, 2. It's a shame that I can count us like out loud. And obviously, if you know anybody born in the 60s, you don't ask that because they're not gonna. Born in the 80s? Okay, 80s babies. And that means there's a bunch of you still born in the 90s. So scary. Growing up in Toronto, like I was born in the late 70s. So, you know, the 80s were for me, I think it was really the formative decade. Like the decade that I was most impressionable, I think. And growing up in Toronto, like I grew up on things like the Chum 30 Countdown and Toronto Rocks and obviously because I'm a boy, we used to watch that exercise show, the 20-minute workout in the morning. I don't think I ever exercised while watching it, but it's just what you did. There's lots of music on that show. Lots of music. But I think growing up on those type of shows, it's very important to note that, you know, nowadays we can turn on any radio station, any TV station, and hip hop is going to be on the radio or on the TV in some shape or fashion. Like even stations that would never play hip hop 10 years ago are now incorporating it, whether it's Justin Bieber's hip hop kind of song or, you know, something. I was just at a meeting where a guy described it as happy rap. Right. But none of these things were available to us growing up. So it's like I was listening to anything from Rick Astley to Michael Jackson, you know, Lionel Richie to Cyndi Lauper or whatever. But I still, you know, growing up, remember the first time really that I think hip hop kind of permeated my world and had an effect on me. One of my cousins had gone to the States and came back, and I was listening to this song called Roxanne's Revenge. And I still remember being in his room and watching the cassette wheels just go around. A cassette, for you guys, I don't even know how to describe it. It's this inefficient, not high quality thing that we used to listen to music on and record on too. But yeah, like how I was able to consume my hip hop was totally different growing up. So, you know, whenever I was able to grab a hold of it, it was special because it's kind of like when you find that $50 bill on the ground, you grab it and you're looking around. These things have happened. I found a 20 last night. You can ask my manager Carlos, he'll tell you. I found a 20 outside of the hostel. Well, you need to hang with me more. But yeah, so growing up, my musical influences were primarily mainstream artists that I had access to, but slowly but surely, through more underground channels, I was able to have access to early hip hop acts. So, you know, I remember, you know, things like, you know, Africa Bambaataa or Grandmaster Flash, or I remember when Two Live Crew first came out, I had to listen to that very low in my house at a low volume. But yeah, those people were my early hip hop influences.
Awesome. And so when did your music start? When did the music start in you? When did you start to create?
To be honest, I have to give that credit to two people. One would be my mom. My mom used to work for the Board of Education, and she was always encouraging me to do different things, even at a younger age. And she, like, since I was a little kid, she knew I was like a hardcore rap fan maniac. And it's like, back then, like, you were really hardcore. Like now, any one of us, we can just go to our phones, Google it, here, listen to this song. But in order to really be into it, you had to like put foil on your, so there was these things called transistor radios, AM, FM, but the signals were really, plug your ears, shitty. So sometimes we used to have to put like foil paper on the antennas in order to pick up these low-level stations that would actually play hip-hop. So, you know, back in those times, I was an enthusiast. And there was a place that used to be in Eaton Center that was called Mr. Green Jeans. And you could go to Mr. Green Jeans and they had a place where, I think for like $10, you could go do a demo recording of 2 songs. So we used to just do it for fun, but my mom kept encouraging me to write. And then there was a fellow by the name of Herman Ellis who used to work at the community center. And he got us to enter into our first citywide contest. At the time it was, imagine the mayor that we had back then. It was the Mayor's Task Force on Drugs. And they had this big contest to see who could write the best anti-drug rap song. So I won. Yeah, so we won. And that's really how it started, because it was one of those things where we would, I was in a group that was called, at first it was called Young Black Panthers, but then we didn't understand that not everybody would be able to swallow that it wasn't working well with the conservative Canadians. So, like a good Canadian kid, I changed it to Young Black and Positive, so that is true story. True story. That was the name of our first rap group. And yeah, we started winning all these local contests, and we started doing shows like, it's like what you see like in the movies when they have like back in the day, and like we were kids and we perform at Dufferin Mall and all these kids are screaming, and I'm like, they don't even know us, why are they screaming? But right, because we're performing in homemade silk shirts. Again, true story. But anyways, these were the earlier days, and that's how we got started. Was we had a passion for something, and once we put it out there, I guess those contests would kind of be like when people have startups and they start to have different testing phases. Is a similar kind of thing, just within music. That's how we started, and basically by the, I guess, consumer reaction, which would be the random screaming people at Dufferin Mall. That's how we knew that we were onto something, and we just continued building on our product.
Obviously, you had all those successes in your early years at Dufferin Mall, and I'm sure others along the way. But what would you say was your big break? Like, when you think back on your career, what is that one thing that you think really stands out, that really pushed you?
I think it's pretty important to make note of the fact that I don't think there was one big break in particular, and I think that's what a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of people that are pursuing their passions, they're looking for that one thing that's gonna catapult them into that, into that next level, into the, some other stratosphere. There were a series of things that worked together and connected, whether I knew it, whether I was aware of it or not, that were kind of, I would look at them as, see, the thing is, I'm older now, so I look back and everything makes sense, but when I was younger, a lot of things didn't make sense. Now, or when I say to people to be goal-oriented with whatever you're trying to build, to say, okay, I want to reach this plateau, you get there, start building plateaus as you get there. Back then, it was strictly passion. So, looking back, being somebody who's mature and been through it all, it's very scary, so I don't even know. Knowing what I know now, I probably would have approached it differently, but what we did was I was blessed enough to, I still remember the day. Here's a defining moment. my mom was in the shower. And I cracked the door while she was in there, and so she, you know, behind the curtain, so she couldn't see me, and I was like, I don't know, somehow that acted as some kind of force field, that, yeah, some kind of barrier that when she started to yell wouldn't hurt as much, but I said, Mom, I want to drop out of York University. And she was like, why? And I was like, well, there's this window that's opening up for music. The window won't always be there, but school will always be there at any time. And I said, I really want to pursue one of them right now because I think that I will be able to excel at one and not do well at the other. And I want to pursue the music. I think I might have been like in my third year at York. And she just said, all right, well, if the music doesn't work out, then you gotta promise to go back to school. No, I never went back to school. So that's probably the defining moment for me because it was at that point in time, and you know, we had a very close relationship. It was at that point in time that I realized she's like, all right, go for it. And that was the time that, you know, with her support, that I was able to dive 150% into what would become, you know, my career, my business.
As your career went